Hi everyone, welcome back into our classroom. As promised, today what we're going to do is the Kookaburra here, which is an Australian bird, a lovely, fun bird. That makes the classic Australian sound. I've been down to Australia. My wife and I have been down to Australia probably 18 times or so. We've taught classes all around through all of Australia. But we used to vacation down north of Sydney, up in an area up in New South Wales, an area called Shoal Bay, and I just had so much fun with the kookaburras that were up there. I used to always feed them and stuff in the morning. Very nice bird, big bird. It is a big bird. It can go anywhere between 11 and 17 inches for us, those of us up here in the Americas. So it's a big bird, and I thought rather than put him in some of this, we'll do more of a portrait of him here. So what I have here is one of my tempered MDF hardened boards. I've given it a coat of a light gray color, which is just a white, a black, and a little bit of yellow into it. And then I've sketched him out onto here. Now this is a picture that I got off of Google. It's actually off of Wikipedia. It's an unlicensed photo here, so you can do whatever you want with it. So it's pretty nice. I think I'll put a little bit of sky kind of modeled behind him. I like some of the mottled greens behind him as well, so I'll do that, and we'll put him on a post here. And we'll do it again as a portrait. So when I do a portrait, a lot of times I'll do, I don't like to do a lot of grisaille anymore. I used to, but it just takes so much time. I like basically going at it, attacking it with direct techniques of alla prima or premier coup. And we've done some premier coup already on some of the birds, so I think I'll do an alla prima type version of here, very direct, very much a tonal painting. Okay, for the colors I have here, my classic palette that I have out for a lot of things that I paint with, the Hansa yellow, Darya light yellow, yellow oxide, burnt sienna, naphtha red light, pine green, phthalo blue, red violet, quinacridone violet, white, and I put out this time raw umber. The bird, the Kookaburra bird here, looks like he has a nice raw umber tone. Now I don't use those earth colors of raw umber and burnt umber very often, but here I'm going to. You could also have out of black, but since there's just some small areas of it, and I like to lean a little bit more to the Impressionists of the late 19th century, where we eliminated black from the majority of our palette. I still use it from time to time, but I feel like that gives you a much better, deeper, dark, richer colors that have more life. Black is a lovely color, but it's dead. It's what we call a dead color. And so if I use black, I usually, add different colors to it. But we can get that with our palette today, that we have those nice darks that we want to get, okay? So first, let's make a plan. So I'm going to paint him alla prima, and in looking at him here, we got your lights and your darks. And I think what I'm going to do is just come in and set in some of the areas of the tonal areas first with kind of a medium tone. Then we'll go in and shadow some tones, and then we'll work up and around his face or shadow from the shadow tones, light tones, and then we'll come back down and decide after we do his face how much of that feathering do you want to do. His beautiful feathered bird. And there's some wonderful variations of them out on the internet that you can find. But I'm going to do a portraiture, which means I want you to come in towards his head a little bit more. And so we'll decide later how much of that we'll express in a flower painting. I'm also going to narrow down this post just a bit here. So let's start out first. I'm going to be using just some water. I have a little cap of extender out here, which I will be using from time to time just to slow down, or I like the movement of it over the surface of the painting here. So I'm going to start out, let's get a nice light violet. I'm painting out on my glass. This is what I like. This is a 1/4 inch tempered glass that I like to paint my acrylics out onto when I do a lot of portraiture. So we'll add a phthalo blue, some white. Let's add a bit of the quinacridone to this to violet this over just to give a little bit of variation to it. and maybe even add a little extender. I like how, you can add extender to make the colors dry slower. I don't really do that because I'm a tone painter, but I do like how it causes the colors to slide over the surface. So value-wise, we're about right between a 7 and an 8. He's going this way, so I'm going to push some of this nice blue here. I'm going to let some of this gray show through here as well. And I won't completely, tell about the background until we get, further along into the painting. But I'm going to put out some of the suggestions because he's got a lot of light and dark colors. And I want this background here a little, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be kind of close to where I want it in the finished painting so that I can see my colors better. So I'm going to leave a little bit of this blue up here, and then I'm going to take some, I love the pine green and burnt sienna type colors together, and I'm going to model them. Model means that you don't mix them up too much, so you're going to get some color variations here. And we're going to just work some of these colors here up and into the backgrounds and around through here like this. And we'll probably do this several times. So I want to, and I'm going to sometimes have a bit more burnt sienna, maybe a bit of yellow oxide into that, strike a different color down in there. And this will help, pull his colors over because he has a lot of those colors in him. And so we're going to want to see some of that. So this is just to give me an idea. I will probably change some of this, rework some of this. Let's just thin this all out and get some watery stuff out here like this. Just some of this movement. That's all I want to have in there. And let's get maybe a little blue, burnt umber, little blue, pine green, and burnt sienna here. A little different color tone through here. Nothing perfect yet. This is just to get some of these nice tones in here, and spread them out just a bit so we can see him. And how much we leave all of that there is all going to be dependent upon how much contrast we paint him with. So, but I do want to do just some larger, more powerful prima strokes through there, just to and see, you can see it starting to soften out as those colors kind of blend together just a bit. And I don't want to do too much blending because I like tones, but we'll do a little bit here. There we go, like that. That's not too bad. And I'll leave some of that gray up there in that corner there as well. And let's just take a bit of our raw umber, bit of our burnt umber, burnt sienna here, and some white. And we'll just kind of maybe a touch of green and blue into that as well. Vary the tone here a bit. Let's just drop some of this in for that post. We'll do a lot to it later. This will be a longer painting than some of the others because we'll paint this more, more portrait. So will take a little bit longer than what I do on some of the others. Now sometimes, when you get a color in like that, and this is all nice and wet here, but when you get a color in there like that, I'll just take a towel and take some of it off to give a little more color interest, especially when my base coat's like a nice neutral gray. So I'm revealing some of that gray, and that will take off some of that heaviness of color. And you can do that, through here. I like to manipulate with a paper towel or a large soft brush some of the edges and stuff here. Remove some of it a bit and add some of that extra, movement there. Just get rid of that like that, and I think that'll be fine. Okay, so step back, take a look at it. You got just a good general tone in there. That's all we want, okay? Now, let's make a plan. So we have here on his back really nice warm colors. They get a little cooler up over here. That's why one reason why you're going to hit these colors here with this burnt sienna and the raw umber really easy, those colors in there. But I want to find more of a medium tone. So here's more of the shadow tone along his mantle here on his back here. As a matter of fact, that would probably be more of his mantle. These would be like coverts or so here. I'm not too sure of the structure of a kookaburra. I've never painted one before. So here we've got this darker shadows. This is rounding down, larger feathers here. So we want to find a medium. We don't want to go light. We want to go to like a medium color here. So let's take some of our burnt sienna. Let's add a little raw sienna to that. And let's lighten that up. And let's go in there maybe right around a value 5 or so. Let's look at that. Even a little bit of that green in there won't hurt too much here. That's kind of a pretty color, right around value 5. I'm going to add just a touch of extender so this slides over the surface a bit. And I want to use good calligraphy here. So this comes down. This is going to kind of turn this way. Brush calligraphy is the stroking of that. How you're going in and filling in an area, because brush marks, textures, and stuff give form to what you're doing. So, curve this just a bit because you get the feeling of that curving there, just a touch. And so you use good calligraphy, shape following, follow the shape of the feathers, the calligraphy of the feathers. It's one reason why I always tell my students, to study wildlife painting. Here you could study, the bird painting like this, a larger painting like this, because it teaches you to look for the movement, the calligraphy of your marks, your color marks, or your strokes, if you want to call them strokes, and teaches you to put those in good form. Because even though, you see, even when I have that here, you can get a general feeling of the shape that I'm doing just by the calligraphy that you see there. Now, so watch this. So I'll come in here, I'll leave a little bit of at an angle like here, 45, and that gives that. But if you leave a bit of that showing through so you see your brush calligraphy, you get the feeling of it as an angle. You don't want to pull down like this on something that is arching his back like that. Okay, so we get a lot of the feeling through the calligraphy. Now let's just take a bit of that color and let's just touch it like right up in here around his eye. Most of this will paint out, but we'll carry that tone around just a bit. And I always, when I carry tone like that, and it's a good thing, I always carry too much and then I paint it back. So that's the way I like to do it. Let's find some good calligraphy here. Just let your brush, this is why I like the soft fusions. I can slide like this and also practice some of the marks that I'll use later on for maybe suggesting some of the shapes of these feathers here. See how that one curves like that? So just curve your brush slightly like that. Now down by that tail, we're going to get more of the burnt sienna. Let's get a bit of white into that. But more of the burnt sienna kind of look, maybe a bit of dark-light yellow to help keep that there. And let's just drop some of that tone in for right now here. So when I paint alla prima, you've seen me do Premier Kook several times where I go for the darks, half tone up lighter each time. So here I'm going to do alla prima, which I'm going to go basically put in some of the shapes and forms in a mid-tone, and then I'll establish some shadow tones and then some lighter tones. So let's just keep this right up in here. Some of this nice sketching I do, I'm just going to end up painting it out here, but that's okay. We'll get it. And again, like anything else, even though you don't see too much of it, you might see a little bit of that. Let's put that up, a few touches of that right up in here. Get used to getting some of that stuff up there. That's a good thing for harmony and carrying tones, so and it helps. Instead of making them just segmented with these different colors, it puts all these different tones in, and that works so well for what it is that we're doing now. Okay, so that's good. Now we got all of these smaller, maybe a little darker, a little more umber maybe into that. So it's a little warmer. This is a little more of an umber tone right in there as a nice undertone. So we'll put a bit more umber into this. We'll darken it down, maybe a value to maybe head down towards our 5 to 4 right in here. And let's just pull some of this a bit darker. So I don't try to, as I'm painting him here, I'm not trying to really hit anything perfect right away. I just want to get into the ballpark and slowly take my colors so I start to see him here. You can leave little spaces between some of the major feather groups so that you don't lose your spot too much here. There's some larger feathers as they come down here. Now I'm just going to kind of push some of them in and maybe leave a little space here. But I want to lift up before I get down because that's really the motion of the feather here. Just back up like that. Down and back up. On the side here, there'll be some heavier ones, a little longer there. We'll address the exact shape of those feathers a little later and help separate some of them. So if they kind of work together a bit, don't worry about it. We'll drop that in, but get this nice motion, that nice calligraphy to these big primary flight feathers here. There we go. Get some of that motion in. And he's got these secondaries right here, just a touch lighter. So that'll help separate them a bit as well. Just a touch lighter. Here. That'll be good. Right there. So coming down right here. And like that. Go. And I don't, when I'm into a portraiture and stuff like this, don't get in so much, don't concentrate right now on the specifics of anything. Look to the big picture. Now what a lot of artists do, and I also subscribe to that, not everyone subscribes to it, but there's lots of different techniques. What I subscribe to also is you squint down just a little bit and you're looking for the major areas. That's all. Major blocks of color. I don't do that with every technique, but when I'm doing one like this, alla prima, that's one that I do. So I'm just looking for the major blocks of color. I'm not looking for any of the real specifics of some of the stuff here. So, just major blocks. Get some of that in with some of that interest, and that's all we want to do. Now you can come in, like this is going to be a bit more burnt umber and a little bit of burnt sienna, and yeah, that's going to be a nice color. We can rotate down here. This is what some of your next step is going to be, the shadowing, and I'm going to put some on here right now, maybe soften that up. You can soften it with a brush, but since the heritage, I use heritage paints, so the paints I use are completely non-toxic. I just go ahead and use my finger. If you're ever worried about any of that, never touch your paints. There's a lot of products out there that are toxic, and don't touch them unless you know exactly what's in it. Since we make these and know I know the formula and everything that's in here. There's nothing, so I can go ahead and touch it without a worry. But never do that unless you know. I'm going to put a bit more shadow right in here. Some of that will paint out. I just like to get this movement in here like that. It's going to help him quite a bit. Now, see, we're in a medium tone, so he's going to look mostly, darker, but he doesn't look too bad. Now, those of you who haven't been watching some of my online classes and everything, this is what I call a 3-camera shoot. So we're shooting this with 3 cameras today. So I have a camera set there about 8 feet away. And then I have another camera here that is looking at it as you're seeing it, from about 3 feet or so. So I'm painting it right here when you see this like this. I step back and I roll my chair back, and I roll it back to about 3 feet. Now, those of you that want to become professional gallery painters, what we usually do is you get up and you get back. You walk back and you take a look at it. Or with me, when I sit in a chair and I have a nice smooth surface here, I just roll back and I take a look at it, and then I roll forward. And I'm constantly doing that. I'm stepping back because I'm painting this to hang in the gallery, and I want this brush calligraphy and all my colors and everything like that to look really good at about 3-5 feet, somewhere right around there. I'll be checking it on that camera when you look at that at 8 feet too, to see the pop of it. If I'm putting it in a larger room, I like to paint it about 8 feet. You'll find some Western painters and Impressionist painters that paint for 15 to 20 feet. Further, it depends on the size of your canvas. The larger the canvas, the larger the room, the further back you paint with. And so the more, the larger difference in contrast you leave between your colors, so it has more bang. You get up close and you go, oh my goodness, wow, I should blend that. No, don't. Because you have optical blending, and that's what it's called, optical blending. At a distance, it starts to look better, okay? So choose your distance that you're painting for. We're going to paint for about 3 to 5 feet here. So you're going to see me roll back several times and take a look at it, you know, from, you know, a different look to it, okay? Let's take some of this before this completely dries here. And let's take some of these browns, maybe a little bit of this green, some of this color up in here. And let's do some of the undertone feathers here. Follow the good calligraphy here to his head. You'll find some that have heavier colors up here. You know, I found some really pretty ones there too. But you'll find some with heavier colors up that are really nice looking. Let's get before we go to that super dark, let's get a bit more of the umbery color into here. I'm just going to drag this. You see kind of a little bit of an undertone right in that area. So I'll lift the pressure on my brush and just drag it through. Rather than a blend, I do this to drag it through. That'll allow my calligraphy to still show feathers here. So I'll pull down just a bit. And see, I like it when the fusion brush, just a little bit of paint, you get these dragged, what we call the granulated edges. That's what I like. That's how I paint those. How I like to paint. And we'll put that nice vertical shadow here that's going to get depth to his eye socket there. Okay. Let's take this. That's a nice gray. I'm going to add a little water to this. And we'll come right down in here to his beak. They have a fantastic beak. And there we go. But it has a nice point to it there. And drops down a little bit, almost like they're smiling a bit here. But I want to pull this way with some of it to give some width. So whenever I paint a bird that has a larger beak, I will pull this way slightly to give some width to it. Don't always go back and forth. That kind of narrows down the beak a bit. Let's take a bit of this and just whisper a bit there underneath. We'll put some of that will be taken away by the yellows and stuff that we add later. Let's add some of that. A bit more right up underneath here. Pull down right in there. That puts that break into his head there. I could up in the very front up here. Let's actually warm some of this. So up in the very front up there, you'll see it has just a slight more of a yellowish cast to it. So what I'll do is I'll just back off a little area. This is why I like the glass. I can back off a little area, add a slight, warm it with some yellow oxide here, just a bit, and I'll shoot that little bit warmer. It could have a touch more yellow here. It's almost those yellows in there. That's better. Get that yellow in there. Let's take some of that yellow oxide and let's just push a bit of that in here into his lower beak. Pull down slightly. We have more tones to put in there, but this will just start that here. We'll be painting this several times. There, okay. And yeah, and let's take a bit of this tone with a bit of yellow oxide into it and pull through right in here. Add that extra little bit warmer right in there. Warmer little tone. That's what I look for. I'm a tone painter. I look for little tones around that I can just interject here a little bit and to push them in. And let's push just a touch of this right down into here. And then we're ready to go over towards our white. So I'm going to use this now. We want to stay away from white. Really, I look at the bird there. You know, he's not a 10. He's not a white 10 in any of that. If I do put any in, I'll preserve this area, maybe here, maybe a touch right up there. So which means I'm going to start down a little bit more gray, maybe down around a 6 or a 7. Probably a good 7 here. So which means closer to an 8 because it will dry down to a 7. Somewhere right in there. Some of your yellow oxides, a bit of your there's a little fly right there, and some of your yellow oxides, a bit of the whites and stuff in here with that. Find a good calligraphy. You see that pulling out there like that? Let's just find a good calligraphy here. Very close to my good 7 that I used on my background here. But I'll just drag over some of this other tone. Pull some of this down this way. Right in there. Let's pull this cheek that's going to come down here. So I'm going to want to paint him with some nice textures up on his head and stuff here that I think will be just wonderful. So let's pull some of this down. I like that nice draggy. Start to run out of paint a bit. Be powerful with your stroke. So that's a good undertone. Nowhere near the white that I want to use, but it's a good undertone to that. Let's get a bit more gray, even a little bit of this green that I have left here. And let's push that right in there by the edge of his beak. And so I don't forget, I might take a touch of that burnt or that raw umber right there and touch in his nostril right there. So I don't forget that later on. Okay? So we've got a good, when you're looking at this stage of him here, and step back and look at it, step back and look at it. He's at a medium tone. He doesn't have his lights on him. He doesn't have his super darks on him. He's at a nice medium tone, but it's evolving through some of the cools and some of the warms. You've got a good base for your lights. You need this color here. This is so very important, guys. You need that 7 so that when you come in there with the white, it'll look white. If you get that too white right now, your whites later on are not going to look white. And that is a classic problem with young painters. And, well, even experienced painters like myself sometimes will get areas too white. Okay? So we want to make sure that we're down. Use that value scale. If you don't have one of those value scales, you can go click the link that's right into the video. Go over to the JansenArtStudio.com, click the free videos, and they're right there to download. This value scale that I use is right there for you to download and print off so that you know right about where you are. We have nice lights. And now, see, by leaving at least 2 to 3 value different between where I am and where I'm going to go, I will be able to establish some nice calligraphy with my brush when I go to paint this his head here in just a little bit. Okay? All right, so let's go back in. So that was, I was using it for most of that painting there. I was using my 10 Fusion Flat. I like that because it's a bigger brush. And I'm a big follower of Sargent. And Sargent always said use as large a brush as possible for some of the areas that you're going to paint. Now, I'm going to come down. I'm going to drop down in size of brush here, maybe down towards my 6 here for just a little bit, and put in some smaller color marks that are going to help me with definition, some smaller darks. So I'm going to take a little raw umber right in through here, and I'm going to help separate here where that head is going to go right in there. Just a few color marks or strokes of that. Kind of hit that calligraphy of that a bit there. I like that. Let's get a touch more dark right into here, so a smaller stroke of it following that. We'll get a bit, it's just a touch warmer right up here in front of the eye. I'm going to put the eye in just a minute, but so a bit of raw umber and burnt sienna together here. So just a bit of that nice warm that you see right in there before the eye. And I'll start looking for stuff like that. Maybe a bit more burnt sienna, just a little bit. Touch down there. The more tonal control you can get in here around these eyes and his head and stuff in here and get some good calligraphy, the more interest your bird's going to have. And he's a beautiful bird, so we should take our time and get some nice interest. Maybe a little bit up above the eye there. He's got that real powerful, I'm going to go back to a slightly medium to a light here, a little gray. He's got that real powerful vertical here that I do want to preserve that in there. Okay, so I'll be probably hitting that several times because I want to preserve that vertical that's there. Gets a bit more of the burnt umber right along the bottom part or right along the edge of the top and lower beak here. Bit of that shadow curve there. Pull up and down just a bit. So we're looking at shadows. There's a bit of this nice burnt, raw umber shadow pulling right here, right from his line of his face and into his beak out at a slight here angle out there. We'll push that in. Okay. He'll have some lighter colors, but his lower beak is basically, I think, dark enough. We need to get the lights in there, just like we'll get the lights up in there in the top of this beak here as well. But I think maybe another smaller touch of the warmth right up in there of that yellow, just to help get that, I'm really looking at that warmth in there and that real nice yellow burnt sienna little mark right in there. I like that there. Okay, maybe just a few little touches of this burnt sienna through here, which warms and oranges it up, basically. Burnt orange color there. That's not too bad. Okay, let's look down through our painting here. You could use the smaller 6 here with some of your darks to refine a bit more of your shadow marks into, say, some of his larger primaries here. Right, get that shadow line up here. We'll do a lot of negative painting on these later, but negative painting to paint because he's got little light tips on it, and we're going to want to negative paint those out to give a good look to that. We'll keep this edge kind of dark right there to make the blue feathers that we'll put on there later show up better. I'm going to keep this just onto the inside there. And let's take this with a little yellow, little burnt sienna into it, and you can just make some suggestive colors of the banding here on his tail coming across. Just don't try to copy it, just kind of be suggestive of it, where you see larger areas, smaller areas here, and they don't exactly line up. That's what gives you the feeling of the 2 and 3 feathers here. Here like that. A little bit smaller marks as they get up here. A little bit of water that's drying out a bit. Some smaller marks up here. And sometimes when I'm painting here, some of the tails, like the little Carolina wren and stuff like that, that have a lot of these bands on their tails, I just quickly will make marks like that and sometimes not do too much. Now he's going to have some light colors out on his tail, but sometimes I won't do too much more than just some real simple marks because I'm so far away from his face, and if I'm doing a portraiture of him, I want to keep most of the interest up there by his face. So I'll just do it kind of simply and not too much detail. I love this big, darker flight feather here, though. I do want to really capture that big one right there. Yeah, a nice, powerful movement of it. Here, nice, powerful edge. That one and that one there. That's kind of nice. Okay, let's go on. And I'm going to switch over to use, this is my number 4 synthetic. Whenever I work, bird of prey or portrait or like the girl back there and stuff, when I go in and around and I'm modeling in and around the eyes, I like a little bit more spring to my brush than sometimes with the fusion brush. The fusion brush is a very soft brush. And so I go to a synthetic brush, an acrylic synthetic brush, and it has a little bit more spring to it. So I can get a bit more of a definition to it. So I do that a lot in portraits. I'm going to take some raw umber and I'm going to make a darker color. I want to get some violet in here, some blue and some red violet into this. Raw umber, blue, red, violet. And this will make a nice dark tone for us here. And I'll have a couple different versions of it. But and I'm going to use my stick in here whenever I start to work and I rest my hand against it, and this makes it more stable. This allows me to work in here if I'm going to put in the pupil of the bird here, where I want to just push in some of that nice dark, get that nice dark in there here, and it'll actually get a little lighter to the lower part of his eye. So you have the pupil of his eye, then the eye itself, which you can just lighten a bit. Let's just push a little light into this here, gray it up, and we'll just drag through that just a bit to push in some of the lighter modeling color of his eye here. And you know, when I do that, then I'll look at the other tones around. Like there's just a touch of a burnt sienna, and sometimes I'll take it and like here, right on the lower quadrant of the eye, right in here in the socket, there's that burnt sienna warmth that's right in there. And sometimes if I don't see it on the bird, I'll go ahead and add it in. The Kookaburra does have a bit of an eye ring. He's kind of in shadow here, but we can suggest it with a touch of a lighter color. And sometimes I will, because the eye ring is really important to kind of bring the eye off of the face. Otherwise, sometimes you lose it into the face. So sometimes I'll overpaint it a little bit more than what you might see. Let's take some white, some of our raw umber, and some yellow, some nice warm here. Let's take this up to an 8 or a 9 right in here with our stiff little brush. And let's paint that ridge, the socket ridge here of his eye. Drag down over that just a bit. Drag down into that vertical there just a bit. Some of that right in here. So it's just a value or so lighter than what we were using here earlier. This is where you're going to start to get some of that calligraphy. Around the face here, I'll do that calligraphy with the little synthetic, but I do enjoy the calligraphy of the fusion brush, so I won't paint too long with this, but I do like this stiffness that allows me to get a bit more detail here. Let's pull that feathering out here, like that. Sometimes blur the edge there. Yeah, that'll work. And sometimes it takes you a couple times to work it, but the big thing in here, guys, is value control. Don't get too light. You get too light, you'll lose the whole shape of your bird, because he's got this real light head, but it's not really all that light. There's a lot of values in there. So sometimes I'll put something like that on, and then I'll shadow back down a bit. I'll step back down in value a bit and tap that around. Get some of that medium value running in there as well. As I'm building this face, see, that's what I'm doing. It's just slowly building this face. We want some of this softer, like value 7 or so here, 6, 7, to drag up into that dark just a bit, to break those edges there. Okay. And yeah, that works. but I'll go back and forth. So sometimes I'll go back little raw umber, a little burnt sienna, a little yellow here, make some of those tones and restate again just a bit more through. I do this several times on like animal portraitures that I do. I like to rework the tones several times to create like a little layering of those tones. I feel I get more interest, especially if they're a lot of fur or a lot of feathering. Layering like that gives you some nice looks. Okay, I'm going to put that down for a minute and go back to like my, where did I put my 6 here, my fusion, which I enjoy the most, feathering the most. Let's go right into here, take some of this warm. Don't use pure white. Let's go up towards an 8 to a 9. And let's work through the bird here, following some of the calligraphy here. Just lightly push, pull like that, following some of this calligraphy for his head here, leaving a few spaces. Just drag it like this and let the color run off the brush. So I'll push real hard and lift off, and it'll run off like that, and I get a real nice kind of building of a feathering look to him there. Change the tone. I kind of stroked a bit long with that tone. I do like to only do a few things with the tone and move on, but I'll darken it down just a bit here. Let's put in this calligraphy heading that way. Yeah, that's kind of nice. Let's turn this calligraphy down so it's sitting towards his neck. Pull this down, straight down there. So you see that, see the calligraphy that you get in there with that. See, it's really nice. As long as you don't go too light, don't go too light too fast. It's a building process, okay? Don't go too light too fast, because you'll destroy it. The lights will, the most dangerous color an artist has in their palette is white, because it's the most opaquing of the colors. So we want to build to that white slowly here. Let's follow some of that tone out. Change that up a bit. Here, pull that out. Okay, just like that. That's pretty good. I could use another shot of that shadowy tone. So this is what I like about Alla Prima. So I'll go back and forth. So I'm going to make a little raw umber, burnt sienna, and yellow here, and reset that tone right out there, just right over that edge a bit. There, soften that line. Before I go up in value now, I'm going to go up. Let's use some of this. Let's go up lighter. Drop down just a bit on your palette so you can see it here a bit lighter. Get a fresh paper towel here. Okay, so you see it a bit lighter here. Okay, right up over here. Okay, and don't want to go to pure white. Let's just put out a little bit of pure white right here so you can see. See, I'm not a pure white. Right over here in the corner. Let me push this up a bit so you can see that a little better. So I'm not a pure white. I'm grayed of that just a bit here. Let's start right up by the eye. Get that other larger stroke of that right down in there. Not into his eye, Dave. Let's stay out of that. Let's pull some of this strokes back up like that. Here. Boom, build this crown feathers here. We'll use more of the chisel of the brush here to get some softer looks to that. And I like to pull back like that so I take some of that extra off and get that fuzzy look to it. I like that. Okay, and he's got a kind of a big area here that's, you know, on his kind of his forehead kind of. So I want to suggest that with some of this feathering here. That's like that, and push back, take some of that off. So I'm using a lot of paint now, and so I can push off and get those edges like that. It's one of the things I love the Heritage paint to do. It does it so well. One of the things we formulated it to do. We're going to fuzz him up here a bit because he is a fuzzy looking thing. There's some really pretty pictures of these out on the internet. Let's build that. So I really want to build up some nice textures on him up there here as we get going. Let's push this down here. Push that back and forth a bit there. Get that heavier look right in there. Build a bit more. A bit more. Let's build up this down and larger stroke here. There we go. There we go, like that. And I'm going to reset a slightly darker tone, maybe around a 6 or so, right down into here to soften that expression just a bit. Pull that down. So you see it works with that other. Now I can even go in there because he's still a little bit darker, so I can even go in there with more raw umber, maybe a bit of the yellows and stuff into it, and set that, pull that out just a bit there. I like it when I start to get this real thick paint because I can push it back and forth a bit and direct it. So he's a little darker, a little heavier, so let's get some of that in, maybe a touch of burnt sienna into that. A little more raw umber, a little darker right into here. That's better. Not all the way out, just a bit more. Like that. See, I push those together like that with the thick paint. It just works really nice. Gives you a nice movement of it. We want to keep that calligraphy though. Here. Let's keep that warmth right in there. I like that. Pulling out that way. I like that light dark contrast in there. Bit of that right in. Let's open a bit of his eye up, just a touch there with that. That works pretty well. I'm going to restate. I'm going to put a little more of a violet. Use just a corner of my brush here. Just push that right into that real dark area there, into his eye. Now we'll put a catch light into his eye. Not quite yet. We'll let that dry up. We'll push that catch light in. Let's get a little bit more light. Not quite to a 10, but pretty close. And let's add a few strokes of that. Now you can see how it's lighter. Don't go everywhere with it. Think round areas, little highlights. You know, you don't drag highlights all over everywhere, but so think little highlights. We can tap a bit of this light little brushing of it right up there to pull that edge of his feathering right up there. But I like it a little heavier, coming right down here towards his mantle and lift off just a bit. So it turns like that. That'll help his head sit there like it gives the turn of his head. So the feathers go this way and then turn down this way like that. These can pop off to the side like they show on him. There. That's pretty good. I got a little bit more of an angle than what he does there, but that's all right. It looks good, so I'm not going to mess with it. Let's just drag a bit of this through. Creates the calligraphy of his feathers right up there like that. Maybe a bit, using just a chisel of the brush up like that. Don't drag it everywhere. You got a light color, you'll paint out everything really quickly. So you're just giving him some nice fuzzy calligraphy here. And you can build it up a little bit more, lighter, smaller. I want to build it right up in here a bit more. The more light that you put on and start carrying it, the softer, smoother he will start to look. So this is where it really becomes important. So step back and take a look, okay? At 8 feet there, you're still seeing, I'm looking at the monitor there, which shows it at 8 feet. You're still seeing a pretty good calligraphy to the feathers. So I'm in pretty good shape. Control, how much? It may look terrible up close, but then when you get back, it's going to look better as the opticals blending starts to take over. So, always consider that. Always step back and take a look. Doesn't always look so bad when you get a little further back. let's get a bit more light. Let's go up to just about as pure white now. Let's push a bit of that right up here, right up into that edge there. Not everywhere, just a few hits of it. Get that nice draggy one right there. Maybe one pulling down like that. Right in there. Bit light. Let's grab a bit more light. Bring that nice. This is where I would really like to see some textured strokes right up in there, you know, starting to come in. Now, and again, this starts to look a little bit stroke, you know, a lot of movement right in there. So as you carry that, I went back down here to like an 8, and I'll soften some of that look a bit with an 8, and maybe put 1 or 2 textured marks there, up like that, and soften that just a bit, so that gives a bit more. Now, you know, you can use the edge in the synthetic brush, the little acrylic set that has more spring in it, works really well, but just a little edge and give that nice fluffy look to his head right here, just by some of the white. Just use the little chisel. I like to use that rather than a liner brush or detail brush, because it is a more casual edge. I'm going to darken it back down just a bit here and add a bit underneath here, but I want to leave this more as a shadow, not as light. So just a couple values. Darker here, right up underneath it. Preserve that kind of shadow there. Run up pretty close to it, but preserve that. Just a touch more light right there. Right like that. That's good. So it gets just a bit of that shadow. That looks pretty good. Let's take some of this light, not pure white, back down to our 9 or so here, and just pull some real quick casual marks down. And these are kinds that I do real quick, and leaving more of a brush mark more than anything else. That leaves a better calligraphy for the bird here. Nice calligraphy. Let's give him a little fuzzy edge here, a little fuzzy body there, just a bit. Just pull out. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, to work into here, we'll come in not quite with the lightest, but pretty darn light. We did some burnt sienna, some raw umber in here, and we're going to lighten that up here. We get lighter. Some of this has a bit more burnt sienna in it. Let's get lighter here. Okay, and we'll pick out more of this center area here. We're going to touch and lift off, dragging this off. I do this a lot on bird portraits here. And we can negative paint up into that as well, but we're going to start to find that light. First, we'll put it in what I like to call the low light, the lower. It's a highlight, but it's a lower light. We'll push some of that in, right in there. And you can take your finger and drag that, but if you're pretty good or pretty close with your tones, you really don't need to do that. Okay, and let's add just a bit darker here. So sped off to the side here. Go off to the side. Look for something a little darker. Here I was, here I am now. Just a bit darker. We'll add a few little softening marks of that on the edges of this other. And then change the tone. Let's go back a little bit more sienna, or the burnt sienna. Let's add just a touch of that in there. And follow the calligraphy of the feather. Find the calligraphy of that feather here. There's a mark of it right in there. Sometimes I'll just pick out like big marks of it. Boom, boom. And I'll just suggest those, and that'll be enough. There, soften that out. Okay. And now we'll go up. Now see, rather than painting, we'll go up in value a little lighter to closer to the final. And rather than, painting and blending, see, I'm painting tones. This is all dry here. And so I'm painting tones. And I go back in and I soften it. When you go back in, you'll see me a lot of times as here. See, that just creates beautiful feathers here. It's called half toning. So I go a half tone up, or I put on a light, then I put on a medium color, and then I make a half tone somewhere right between the two. That's very important, right between the two. And I use that for the softening of those particular tones. So we'll drag just a bit of that through there, like that. Okay. Sometimes let's go a half tone lighter and hit up. Half tone lighter shouldn't need any blending. If you're just a little bit lighter, you don't need any blending. I'm just stroking it on. And see, I don't want to, what I like to do as a tone painter is I don't like to manipulate and blend things together. I rather see the tone, see the color, make it correct, and put it on. Sometimes we consider it like a paint by number, but you get it in there. But that allows you to, when I put the calligraphy of the shape of a feather in, it stays. I don't have to go back and forth to try to blend it. When I go back and forth, I'll lose the shape of that particular feather there. So let's just look at that edge that's right there. See, it's a little harsh compared to the edge that's there. So, but what do you see in there? You see another slightly darker tone, a little bit more burnt sienna, a little bit more of the raw umber right in there. And so all I'm going to do is run that tone. Try not to stroke it very much, but just run that tone right up, and that's the edge of that one. See, I'm not going to go back and forth and try to blend it. That gives you a closer look to what that area is right in there. Let's run that tone up into this one just a bit. Clean your brush, because I pick up that light tone. I don't want to pick it up that much. Let's just run that around, and just take some of that edges of that others off just a bit, so we get some of that nice look. And you can go back and forth like this several times. So I get the feeling that my light is a little bit less, or not as heavy as it is on him there. So I'm just going to reinforce it again. Maybe not exactly the same tone. I don't use the same tone. I'm going to change it just a bit and just build a little more light swirling around here like that. Here. Right around. Okay, he's got a little more. Let's go back to that mid-tone there. Take that back there. Maybe pull that down here like that on that mid-tone. Right there. Now see, it's a bit light, a little bit far, so just take and so I'm not going to blend it back or anything because everything's dry, so I'll just take a little medium tone and take it back just a bit. And that'll sit in there nice. So that's how I like to paint, with the tones, as opposed to trying to make a color and then blend it in. That, to me, that's actually harder than it is to see the tone and add it in. So there, I'll put in some, I'm not going to try to get all those mantle feathers exactly right. I just want to capture some of it. Now, so I'll set that light in like that. Now I'm just going to take a bit more of the raw umber burnt sienna, not quite, just a little bit darker here than what I just put on, and let's just paint down to those edges like that, to the edge of those feathers, and leave that, and then I'll start making those little feathers there on the inside. And you can do that a couple times, back and forth here. That's the dogs. I have 4 of them in the studio here with me now. I have my 2 labs and my older dog, and then my daughter's big, kind of a bull mastiff kind of cross. He's here also. He's a younger dog. He's a little Burfy here. He likes that. Hush, hush, hush. He's a good watchdog, though. So So, but they all like sitting in the studio here. So I'll increase the lightness here of the tone, maybe down this edge here, where I see that on that edge, and if I need to take it down, I don't. So here we painted this basically all dry, and we've got a really nice, look to the feathering we want. We can take a slightly lighter tone that we see up there and add a bit more of the feathering there. Just touch and lift off a bit more of that feathering look, little marks of it. Let's get that a little touch lighter here. And some people attack these with a liner brush and put in a lot of detail and stuff, and that is fine, and I love those too. But to me, I like brush calligraphy and brush marks and portraiture and stuff. I like that look to them, and so that's how I like to paint them. And for me, time. We're a professional studio here. We make our entire living here off of the paintings and selling the paintings, and so we try to get good looks quick as possible. So see, you can get that as you have all these other tones, just dragging that up over that there and leaving that. And if you want more interest, well, mark up another slightly lighter tone, just drag its edge there, and it'll look like it's all blended together there, but it's not there. So we'll get just a bit of that light there. Doesn't look too bad. And I'm always looking at it. I'm looking at it. I have a big monitor here that shows me it at the what you're looking at when I are on a close-up. So I'm looking at it, looking at the comparison of the differences, and then I look at it here on that one further away. So I'm always looking at it at different distances. Let's put some of that light, just lift this off into these light areas back here onto his tail. And there's quite a bit of difference here between what I'm putting on now and what I had down there earlier. Quite a bit of difference. And so that's where you would, if you wanted to have some softness to that, you'd come in here with a half tone. Just come in here halfway between what's there and let's get a little more burnt sienna in it. What is there and what the light is, and just hit the edge of it and you'll soften it out. Don't stroke it too many times, you'll blend it. I don't want to blend it, I just want to soften the tone. But some of those bands there are a little bit lighter, so you can paint them more as a band here, across his tail here. That's all up to you. I'm going to leave that kind of for right now. Let's take some of this light color. Let's show you this. Let's come in. It's one of the techniques I love to use on feathers. I paint a band, but way too big. So we're going to paint this smaller one right here. We'll do this larger flight feather here. This larger one. I like that edge there. I'm going to thin this with just a bit of water. And let's put a bit of the burnt sienna in it and catch this one right down here. Some of these edges. Now, those are way too big, so what I do is I come in, I'll clean my brush out really well. I'll grab some of the darker, the raw umber, a little burnt sienna, the darker, but a lot of raw umber because we're on these darker primary flight feathers here. So we'll grab some of that dark, and what I'm going to do is start right up here and paint down to the edge here. Paint down right to the edge. Now I have to clean my brush several times because as I'm painting out, and that was just a bit far, so as I'm painting out, because I'll pick up that light and I want to leave that little bit of light on the edge of the feather there. Now his is a touch more precise. I don't always like to leave it precise. I like to a little bit more painterly, but you can stop it, or you can pull back if you want it more precise. Start right there and pull back up. Maybe paint down some and then pull some back up. That gives you a different look. You're the artist. You got to find these different looks. See, this is what we do as artists. So I'm going to pull down because I like this one. I'm going to paint that down. Lift off. Change my brush a bit. pull down just a bit, and let's just blur those together just a touch. That's not too bad. It's close to what it is there. Could have a bit more light on it. And I like that real dark too, so I'm going to add a little more raw umber here and restate that nice dark that's right there. And maybe a bit of that light. Let's just pull that up and in just a touch more. So we'll grab that just a bit. It could be a bit lighter, but now you can control that. So if you want to get more detail on this, maybe take the brush and do it again, but a bit smaller, and then come back and paint up against the edge. So this would be considered a negative painting. You're painting out with the larger color. Okay, so that would be the negative painting of it. Let's take some of this light here and pull some of these right across. This is where I just lift the pressure on the fusion and let the colors drag, and you see you get that nice draggy little edge there. Okay, now it's a little darker right up here, so we'll darken that just a bit right up there, and a little lighter. So we'll go up here to a little lighter. If you want to preserve some of this, I don't always like to preserve it because I'm a tone painter. I like to mix a different color. I don't like to paint too long with the same color. But if you want to preserve this, you just keep extender in it here. Just mix in a little bit of extender and you'll be okay. There, like that. I like that kind of look that's there. Okay, so really detailed. This might have a touch of some light edges to these back mantle feathers here, but we'll have some more darks. The raw umber, burnt siennas here. Let's just pull curving down just a bit. See, you can reset your darks right away, right into all of this, and then just touch it here. Move it, touch it into his face too. I was trying to avoid that, but boy, that shadow looked pretty good on his face. So we'll touch this down. Follow the calligraphy of that roundness that you see here, and see, then you can touch and bring back that medium tone there. Let's pull some of this back up and get that feathering back up there like that. That's not too bad. So it's all it's just all a nice finding your way through. Let's model some lighter. Let's take some of this, just model this up a little lighter, a value or two lighter here, right up through here, just real quick. And you can see we modeled those other tones in there. And modeling means you put it on the colors without blending them together. So you're just touching them through here. Let's I'm going to add just a touch of extender here to slide. I like my colors sliding on the surface here on some of this, especially in this particular layer of it. So I'm going to work this through. You can see when I slide and lift, see, it gives it more of the look of feathers. That's what I like. Just going to push a little bit of that in there. It's a nice tone here. There we go. Now, a nice kind of a bluish tone here. Kind of a bluish tone. And softer little gray. So I'm going to take some of this umber color right into here. And we'll make that real light. I hit a bit of violet there. Let's go real light. Little bluish tone. Some of them you can really see a lot more blue into it. Let's go a touch lighter. It will dry a touch darker, so let's look at this color right here, and we'll start to add more specific little marks here. I'm not going to try to pattern him perfect to that other one, just set in some of these nice and smaller little touches as it goes up here. There's I could use a few more. Mine's a bit thin in his strokes here, so let's just add a bit of this up and through. And I'm turning the brush onto the corner. So I start out with the flat down here, pushing these in. And then for the smaller ones, I just flip over onto the corner of the brush here. Let's just pull that down. Now, any of these get too much, you just negative paint them out. Grab that other tone and just take them out. There, just like that. That's not too bad. Captured. I just try to. I don't try to, perfectly paint it, copy it. I try to just emulate what I see in that area. That's what I try to do. So let's just grab some of that there, like that. That works. So some of these edges that are there. So you see the edge there's a little harsh compared to the edge that's there. So all I got to do is look at that edge and say, yeah, there's a little bit of my dark. Just overriding that edge. Don't paint it too many times. Just override the edge just a bit. And that'll set it back into the body. A touch more like that and you'll get closer to that look. Okay? I'm an edge painter. I'm always watching the edges. Let's take a bit of, it's got really kind of light legs. Some yellow oxide, maybe a touch of umber in it, and some white. And just give the suggestion here of his legs. Like I say, I'm away from my center of interest, which is up by his head, so I just want to give a suggestion. A little suggestion of some shadowy movements there. And now down his side over here on the other side, there are some darker movements still, darker feathers and movements, and so I may want to, I do like that contrast there, so I'll just look through, maybe put a mark of an edge. Sometimes I'll negative paint to soften it. Sometimes just a real quick little mark of the light is all that edge needs over there. Just real quick. My white's really getting dirty because I've worked a lot of colors into it. Real quick little lights there. And his whole feeling of his feather, of his tail, is darker down along the side. Mine's kind of a more sienna color, so I will address that. Take some umber here, raw umber, just come down the side here and address that right along that edge there. Pull that across. Let's get that a bit more right in here as well. Pull that in. There. Band or two there. That's not too bad. It just, I'm not trying to copy it, I'm just trying to emulate it. So that's not too bad here. But you could, I'm using a 6. You could go down to a 4 and really give some nice details here. And that's up to you, how much time you want to spend on it, on your painting. Because he's really a beautiful bird. And you could spend a little more time developing him a touch more. For example, like if I take that synthetic, this does the most beautiful of the edges. Let's go right up here to some of our tan kind of color here with the edge. And if you wanted these secondaries here to pop off a little bit more, you can just run the line. And see, I don't do it with light. I'll go ahead and run the line with the light. And then, he has like 6 there. I'm only going to do 4. But then I'll take the dark and I'll paint the light out with the dark down to the thinness that I want that feather to have. I find that's the easiest way. Rather than doing a line of light, like a little liner brush stroke. I see some do it that way, and that's fine, but this works really easy for me because for me, and everything that I do and the techniques that I use, the darks paint out the lights the easiest. So I tend to do those, you know, I like to do the paint and control the dark, or control the lights with the darks. I'm gonna work a bit more right up here. Let's get a bit of this light tan and work that right in there a bit, a little more color. Let's take just an edge of that. I'm gonna probably express his catch light just a bit more than what we might see on him. So you can see that it's just a bit more, but I kind of like that. And I want that real blue umber dark right along his edge. Gotta need a paper towel here. Always, every time I rinse and stuff, always pinch wipe your brush out really well. Get that water out of there, because it'll travel down your brush and distort your mark that you're trying to put on. So I'll make sure I get that nice dark in there. And see, some artists will go right into the black in an area like that, and I don't really have a problem with that, but you're introducing a pigment that you're not really carrying too much. And so, you know, you get into the portrait painters and the Victorian portrait painters, and even today, a lot of Premier Coupe painters and stuff, they don't believe in adding that dark, that black in there, and I'm one of them now. I never understood, but now I completely understand. Now, I like that, but I got that, took out some of that warmth that's up there. So I'm going to restroke down with a bit more yellow here and pull that down one more time right in there, right up there like that. I like that kind of vertical stroke there that really flattens that plane of the bird out. Let's take some of that dirty light color, add some white, some yellow oxide, some some raw add some white, some yellow oxide, and some raw umber. Here we go. Slow down, Dave, you can do this. Okay, let's push some of that light. This is my synthetic now again. Let's push some of that light just lightly right in there. And I like that light. See how it gives him a little bit more light in there. Now maybe change it. I don't want to drag it too far. I'll flatten out his beak. So let's maybe add a little more yellow oxide and a little more raw umber to that and just soften that. That would be considered a half tone right there. See how it softens that out. Let's push a bit brighter. Let's put some yellow oxide, maybe a bit of darulite. Let's give him a bit lighter. You know, sometimes up to the tip of their beaks, the light, you know, a light shines through it, so it appears a bit lighter. And you know, how much of this kind of stuff are you going to do? That's up to you. But I find if I'm doing it just takes a couple seconds to add so much to a portrait of a bird there. So now you get some more model interest in there, right? Now let's take some of this blue that we had right over here, almost dry. This is a beautiful thing about the Heritage. This is almost dry. I'm just going to reconstitute this with some water and add that yellow in my brush. That's okay. Let's take this down and kind of drag over this part of the beak a bit. Maybe a few marks of it coming down that way. A few bits of it going down there. Puts that grayer color into his beak there. And maybe a touch lighter here. Right up by the top of that. Goes a bit straighter than what I had there. There. Let's go a touch lighter. A little more yellow maybe. Here. Model that down right around his nose. Here. Pull that down just a bit there. Like that. That's looking pretty good. Yeah, I could use a bit of a lighter stroke right up here on the front of his head to pop that out. Let's pop that out a bit. This is this little detail work. Sometimes I tap the little edge of the brush to make the small little feathers right where the beak and the head come together, right in there like that. There's a bit more of a interest to them, you know, and yeah, and I really should paint him again with a lot more texture. I love the textures. Maybe give him just a touch more right in there. And let's take some of this nice tan kind of colors, little sand, just, and this is where I kind of like to just touch it, just move it around to break up anything that I feel might be a little solid. I'll just break it up with some colors. I do like that raw umber burnt sienna combination in there. Just pulling down, opening up that eye socket area a bit more. Let's get just a bit more sienna. I don't have this shape correct, which is comes out a bit more there. And let's get that feathering just a touch more out here. Out just a touch more. And maybe a bit lighter right down in there. So I start thinking, you know, when we started this, we started out really big, and now I'm working smaller and smaller tones that just make a big difference in him. You know, I do like that little bit of the light kind of folding back over. And so I'm going to take a bit more white and touch and lift off, folding back up over that edge just a bit more. Like that. Not quite like his, but pretty close. Maybe a bit more light. This is where I really like pound on some texture to really make it come forward here. Because it's a good look, good area right in there. You know, and just tap some of that forward. You can see that little bit of texture there really pops it forward. Maybe a touch too much will take a bit of it off there. You could put a softer little half tone right up against that edge here, which will just soften some of that. That's up to you. Restate any of your darks back here. Now see, they restate really easy because the color's already underneath there. So you can model back up there again really easy and give some nice looks. See, because the other tones are there already. So you can push through and just use the edge of this little synthetic for just marking some small little movements there that look pretty good here, like that. That looks pretty good on him, I think. For, you know, let's go with our 3/4 inch brush. Let's just take some of this and some water, see if we can reconstitute some of this. We'll do it softer, but we'll carry some of this down right through with that. Just drag the edge of the brush here and create some movements there. Let's get a bit more burnt sienna and raw umber here and brush through. Carry. I'm going to put a bit more burnt sienna in than what that post shows, just because I want to carry the bird colors down here. I want those to show up down in there. And let's grab some more umber down. Don't want to get too wild and crazy with this post. Just some real kind of casual movements of the light and dark here. And so he sits on that okay. Let's get out here with some different greens. Lighter, more toned here. Get some of them going as well here. Add a little water. So I modeled up a little bit of Hansa, a little bit of pine green, a little bit of white here. And break that edge there. sometimes it's kind of nice to have, I like that bit of light coming through there. I don't try to make exactly the same color, but I like that little bit of light, kind of yellow-green right there coming through. So I might push that in a bit and rub that in. I like to do real quick. I'll add some extender here so it slides, but I like to do real quick, like brushwork type stuff, and keep my calligraphy very, very movement, very movement oriented. In other words, just lots of the color, the tones themselves stay very close, but the movement, the brush movement, goes pretty nice through there pretty quickly. And yeah, let's get a little bit of that burnt sienna and green and move that through again. So you can see, just get some of that happening there. Let's get a bit of that light up there, right up there, like that. And yeah, a bit more of that. Let's get very much alla prima, very much the nice calligraphy here going through. Blur some of that off. Here we go. A little bit of that vertical work there is working nice with him, but a good horizontal, because he's so vertical, so a good horizontal would also be nice to kind of break that edge there just a bit, or break the movement, so it slows the viewer's eye down and gives more interest. Let's go back to a bit of our blues. Grab some of this nice dirty white, and I'm going to toss some extender into this light, maybe a bit of that violet here, and work that through, back down through there again, right into some of those greens. This is what I like, the nice movement of it. Let's drop this down just a bit. Get some of that nice movement. Then just blur those all together like that, see, so that it softens out some of that color movement behind him there. Maybe draw some of this further down like that. And that creates, like maybe, holes in trees and stuff, around there. There we go. Just move some of that around. Yeah. Helps him pop forward. And let's rinse some of that green out of my brush. Go back to this blue, maybe a little violet. If I do a large field of blue, I do like it to change, so it's not all the same here. So let's just change it up a bit. Some of that green there. That looks pretty good. A little touch of violet there. It's not too bad. And just some lights, sparkles here through. That looks pretty good. I just come through, and boy, this used to be so hard for me. Now 1,000 paintings later, it's not so bad. I used to just stress over that so much doing, he's got a little point to that beak, so I want to make sure I emphasize that. I used to just stress over doing real broken things like this. Now it's just build it and have some fun. It does that. That's not too bad, and I don't think I might, bring that light line down on this post a bit more. Just carry that light line down. There. Break that up a bit. There. Not do too much to that. I do like making those little marks, and you see them, you see like little marks and stuff going across, and I just find that helps break that, the straight line of it, and it adds interest and stuff like that to it. could add a few more little details into the beak there. We could, you look at him and you say, do you want him more friendly? Do you want to pop him off a little bit more? That would be, to do that, you would, bring out that eye ring. You bring out that eye ring, which is going to contrast that darkness of the eye, even though we don't see it in our sample photo there. We bring it out just a bit more here. And that's going to, bring him out, even more so. I don't want to. He's got a big, really soft. Get some real burnt sienna into that. Darker shadow, right around his eye socket itself, because his eyes set in, almost like an eagle set in. So we just want to kind of shadow that back just a bit there. And now I've arched it just a bit more than what it is on his, and that keeps them more friendly. If you want to make him here more realistic, I'll just pull down some light color over that and bring in more of that straight line. But if you get it too straight, he gets angry. And I thought he was quite a friendly bird, so I don't want to make him angry here. There we go. Something like that. I think it's close enough that he's kind of a fun little bird. You can put a little bit more onto his feet. You can put more into the backgrounds or anything. Let's step back, take a look at him back there. That's not too bad. You could even go a little bit lighter with his head, with that blue. But if you start doing that, right now he's popping off, I think, enough. And I think it would be, now let it dry, see what it's going to look like, and after, go take yourself a good break and see what it's going to look like. And then in an hour or two, go back, take a fresh look at it and see. There's a lot of artists that say, do you do that? Wildlife painters. For example, let's go this way. Alla prima painters believe sit down once, get it done. That's basically the essence of alla prima. Get it done, because today's feeling is going to be different just a little bit. The second you get up, it's going to be different. Wildlife painters, which I like, there's some of them, some of the greatest ones, say put it away for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then revisit it and look at it, and you'll look at something different. Violates some of the premises of the rules of alla prima, but it does work too. But in 3-4 weeks, you're going to be a different artist than what you were there, and looking at it, it's a bit different, and you can run the risk of making something more stiff. So how long do you put something away before you go back and look at it again, or fix something or correct something? That's going to be for your giving technique. That's going to be for you. When I do a portrait, like the one back up there and everything like that, I like to do a pure alla prima, sit down, get it done. There are times, though, that I have to paint it over a day or so, and I find myself questioning what I did yesterday, and that becomes a problem, because then you start to fix that, and that can make the painting more stiff. Okay, so that's another reason. Try it all. That's the biggest advice I have for you. Try it all. That's what I do. I try it all. And if I'm not happy with something, I'll put it away. But always remember this: if you put it away and then come back 2 weeks later, remember always in your mind, you're changing little things. You're not changing big things, because you can start to question everything that you've done, and that's really not the way to go about it, in my opinion. Okay, so be careful about putting it away too long and taking a look at it. I like the freshness of it, and taking it from there, and calling that painting done. And you want to make something different, go do a different one. Okay, all right. So if you've enjoyed the video, please hit like. Please share our videos. That would help us out. We really appreciate that. We have, we've coming up towards the end of our birds, but I'm going to continue on and do a few more. So we have the time here in the studio. I'm going to film up a few more, and so we're going to continue on, and then we're going to go into some alla prima studies, and I'm going to show you how you take the heritage and start slowing it down to 3-4 hours in some of your paintings if you want to do longer alla prima wet edge techniques. So we'll have that coming up onto the channel and some of our paintings here as well as we move out into the fall. Okay, all right, I hope to see you in these other challenges and in some online classes. All the links for everything right down there in the video description. Hit the video description and watch the links, okay? And I hope to see you guys in some of that. And go post your photos over in our Facebook group, the Academies of Decorative Art. A lot of us over there posting there too, okay? Thanks a lot. And I'll see you guys on the next one.